When I responded to the report, I said this has to be a turning point. It does, and we need to speed that up and get on with it as quickly as possible.
Forgive me, Prime Minister, during the election campaign, you made great play of how ready you were, how much preparation you had done.
7 years, this is not unique. We've had no end of injustices that have taken very many years to come to any sort of outcome, and this is not the final outcome.
But you're in charge now. Why can't you give people a date? It is years that you had in opposition. Everybody knew this was coming. You cannot be surprised by what this report has come out with, and this is about people who are, as of this moment, not safe in their own homes.
Keir Starmer's political career is imploding, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. His carefully crafted image of honesty and integrity is crumbling as evidence of his £40 billion tax hike comes to light. Stick around as we break down the moment Starmer lost his cool on camera, exposing the frustration of a leader whose tricks no longer work. This is the political meltdown you can't afford to miss. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favour. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. Costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. When Keir Starmer took the reins of the Labour Party, he painted himself as the saviour British politics desperately needed.
Mr. Speaker, I'm privileged to be the proud owner of a copy of the former Prime Minister's new book. It's a rare, unsigned copy. She claims the Tory party's disastrous kamikaze budget that triggered chaos for millions was, her words, the happiest moment of her premiership. We've got a billionaire Prime Minister and a billionaire Prime Minister, both of whose families have used schemes to avoid millions of pounds of tax, smearing a working class woman.
Saint Keir, as some dubbed him, promised a new era of honesty and integrity. It was a stark contrast to the tumultuous tenure of Boris Johnson, and many voters were eager for a change. Starmer's carefully crafted image as a trustworthy alternative quickly gained traction. His background as a former director of public prosecutions lent credibility to his claims of being a straight shooter. In speeches and interviews, he emphasized transparency and accountability, striking a chord with a public weary of political double-speak. Initially, the strategy seemed to work wonders. Polling data showed a surge in public trust for Starmer's leadership. Many voters believed he would actually follow through on his promises, a refreshing change in the often cynical world of politics. His pledge not to raise taxes in particular resonated with working-class voters who felt increasingly squeezed by the cost of living. But as with many political honeymoons, the shine began to wear off. Skepticism started to creep in from both supporters and opponents. Some Labour loyalists questioned whether Starmer's centrism was a betrayal of the party's core values. Conservative critics, meanwhile, painted him as all style and no substance. As time went on, cracks in Starmer's carefully constructed facade began to show. His leadership style, once praised for its calm and measured approach, started to be seen by some as indecisive. Policy positions that initially seemed clear-cut became murkier under scrutiny. The first real signs of public dissatisfaction emerged as Starmer struggled to present a coherent opposition to the government's handling of various crises. Some voters who had initially been won over by his promises of straight talk and accountability now felt let down. The gap between Starmer's lofty rhetoric and the realities of political leadership was becoming increasingly apparent. As we'll see, this growing disillusionment was about to reach a boiling point. The carefully crafted image of Saint Keir,
How much you were going to walk in this building and get things done. And then today, you can't give us a date, a deadline, which is what people want to know. When will they be able to sleep easy in their beds? It is years since the Grenfell fire. You know, you are the Prime Minister now. Some people would want you to hear you say, you know what, in a year, everybody will be safe. In 2 years, everybody will be safe. What's your ambition on this?
Where work hasn't been done, who's responsible, and putting in a place to make sure that we can accelerate that as quickly as possible. That work is ongoing. You can't do that in opposition because you simply don't have access to the material, but we're on it.
Was on the verge of shattering, and a $40 billion bombshell was about to drop that would leave Starmer's political future hanging in the balance. Remember that $40 billion bombshell? It wasn't just a metaphor. Starmer's Labour Party dropped a tax hike plan that sent shockwaves through British politics. But how could the man who promised no new taxes justify such a massive increase? The answer reveals just how quickly political fortunes can change. The news of Labour's £40 billion tax hike plan hit like a tsunami, instantly washing away the carefully constructed image of St. Keir. Public reaction was swift and brutal, with social media ablaze with accusations of betrayal. The media, once enamoured with Starmer's promises of honesty and integrity, now painted him as just another untrustworthy politician. The contrast between Starmer's tax plan and his previous manifesto pledges couldn't have been starker. Gone were the assurances of fiscal responsibility and protecting working-class wallets. In their place stood a colossal tax increase that seemed to target the very people Starmer had vowed to protect. As details of the tax hike emerged, it became clear that working people would bear the brunt of this financial burden. Families already struggling with the cost of living crisis now face the prospect of even tighter budgets. Small business owners, once hopeful for Labour's promised support, found themselves staring down the barrel of increased operational costs. Political opponents wasted no time in capitalising on Starmer's misstep. Rishi Sunak, seizing the moment, condemned the Labour government for breaking promises, emphasising how this budget undermined confidence and trust in the party. But it was Nigel Farage who delivered the most scathing critique, labelling Starmer a liar and suggesting that public trust in the Labour government was irreparably damaged. As pressure mounted, Starmer's team scrambled to justify the tax hike. They claimed it was necessary to address the country's economic challenges, but their explanations fell on increasingly sceptical ears. The public, it seemed, had grown weary of political spin and excuses. Starmer's attempts to defend his position only seemed to make matters worse. Each public appearance, each carefully worded statement only served to fuel the growing narrative of distrust. The media, once his ally, now portrayed every justification as further evidence of his disconnect from the public's reality. As the controversy escalated, the pressure on Starmer intensified. The once unflappable leader now seemed to be constantly on the defensive, his frustration palpable in every interview and public appearance. The political tricks that had served him so well in the past were no longer working, and the cracks in his facade were widening by the day. Keir Starmer's fall from grace has been nothing short of dramatic. Once hailed as a beacon of honesty in British politics, he now finds himself mired in controversy. The £40 billion tax hike has shattered his carefully constructed image, leaving voters questioning not just Starmer, but the entire political system. This debacle raises serious concerns about political accountability in the UK. When campaign promises are so easily discarded, how can the public trust any politician? The long-term impact of Starmer's broken pledges could reshape British political culture, deepening voter scepticism and cynicism. For Labour, the future looks uncertain. With their credibility in tatters, the party faces an uphill battle in the upcoming election. Will voters forgive and forget, or has Starmer's misstep opened the door for a resurgent Conservative Party, or even a third party upset? Only time will tell, but one thing is clear. British politics will never be the same after Starmer's spectacular fall.